I refused to help my sister with her children and told her that she chose her miserable life and she has to take responsibility. When my sister and I were children, we hated each other. My sister was very difficult to get along with, and as a result, she never had friends. She is the kind of person who always believes she is right and can never apologize or admit when she is wrong. As an adult, she still has no friends. She decided to drink the traditional wife potion. She met her husband in college, got pregnant, and dropped out. They have 4 children under the age of 8, and the youngest is quadriplegic due to spinal cord damage and a congenital defect. I just finished law school and am starting my career. My husband already has an established career and we are dinks. We have no intention of having children. Historically, my sister has looked down on us at family gatherings. She says we don't even understand what we're missing out on, that we will never know what true, unconditional love is, etc. Very condescending, as always. Lately, she and her husband have been fighting. Apparently, according to my mother, he has never let her access his income. He gives her cash for groceries. The bills and everything else have always been in his name. Apparently, he has also been cheating on her. My sister asked me to take care of her children on weekends so she can save money and evaluate her options. In other words, leave her husband. When she came to me and asked this, I asked her, "But isn't being a traditional wife your calling? You've told us that many times. You must have forgotten. But traditional wives aren't supposed to work." I laughed a little at how she explained that maybe being a traditional wife wasn't for her after all. I eventually cut her off and told her that she chose this life, the life she has always insisted is superior to mine. It's time for her to learn how to deal with the problems that come with it. My parents can't take care of her kids because my dad works on an oil pipeline, and my mom is too old to work the hours she already does. Our other relatives don't live close enough to do it. She also asked my parents to move in with her, but my dad refused. He can't stand her kids. The day after our conversation, my mother called me. She tried to appeal to my sense of family and my duty as an aunt. She told me how difficult my sister's situation was and how, despite her mistakes, she deserved a second chance. I told her that I couldn't just rescue her from the consequences of her decisions. Not this time. Days later, my sister texted me. Not a message of apology, nor one of gratitude for listening, but a list of reasons why I was a cold and selfish person. She accused me of abandoning her in her most vulnerable moment. She told me that, despite everything, she had always tried to be a good sister and that now that she needed help, I had left her alone. I stared at the message for a moment before sighing. It wasn't surprising. She had always been like this. When things didn't go her way, she found someone to blame. This time, that someone was me. I decided not to reply. I knew that anything I said would only feed her sense of victimhood. Instead, I turned off my phone and focused on my work. I knew this wouldn't be the last time I heard from her. And I was right. A few weeks later, my mother called me again, but this time her voice sounded different. There was concern in her tone. Apparently, my sister had been talking to a lawyer. She was trying to figure out what right she had if she decided to leave her husband. But with no income of her own, no support network, and 4 children, her options were limited. That's when she started making desperate moves. She borrowed money from acquaintances, sold some things she had at home, and, according to my mother, even tried to negotiate with her husband for more money. But he just laughed in her face. And then, the final blow. We found out that she had tried to do something none of us expected. Something that completely changed the way I saw her and forced me to reconsider whether, perhaps, I had been too harsh on her. My mother's message echoes in my head. I find myself caught between the weight of the history I share with my sister and the harsh reality of the situation she has built for herself. I could simply ignore all of this, move on with my life as I have until now. But something inside me stirs, a mix of curiosity, doubt, and a hint of guilt. I decide to investigate, not because I want to help her, but because I want to understand how far she has fallen. It doesn't surprise me that her situation is worse than I thought. She has been reaching out to anyone willing to lend her money, promising to pay it back as soon as she has everything under control. But nothing is under control. Every step she takes seems to drag her further into a bottomless pit. One night, at a casual gathering with some colleagues, I mentioned my sister's case without giving too many details. I don't want them to think this affects me more than it already does. However, the conversation takes an unexpected turn when one of them mentions knowing someone who works at a shelter for women in vulnerable situations. The idea that my sister could reach a point where she needs a shelter impacts me more than I am willing to admit. I have never seen her as someone defenseless. Although she has made bad decisions, I have always considered her capable of manipulating circumstances in her favor. But this time, it feels different. This time, she seems truly lost. I can't help but wonder if, despite everything, she really needs help. Not the help she is asking for, but the help she doesn't want to acknowledge she needs. My thoughts are interrupted when I receive a message from her. Just 3 words: "We need to talk." I take a deep breath before responding, not because I'm afraid of what she might say, but because I know that any conversation with her is an exhausting game. But I agree. We set a neutral location, a small cafe in a quiet part of the city. When I see her walk in, I notice she has changed, not just in her appearance, which reflects the accumulated exhaustion of weeks of worry and lack of sleep, but in the way she moves, in how she avoids my gaze when she sits across from me. "Thanks for coming," she says, without a trace of the condescension that has always accompanied her words. I simply nod, waiting for her to speak. "I've made mistakes," she admits after a long silence, "and I know I've been unfair to you, but I need help." The request doesn't surprise me, but what follows does. "I don't want you to give me money or to take care of my kids. I just want you to tell me what to do." It's the first time she has asked for my advice without expecting me to fix her life. For a moment, I find myself speechless. Not because I don't have an answer, but because I realize that, for the first time in our lives, she is willing to listen. From that moment, everything changes. Not suddenly, not drastically, but in a way that makes me question whether, maybe, after all, there is something in her that is trying to change. Even so, the road ahead is uncertain, and although for the first time I am willing to help her find it, I can't help but wonder if she will really be able to follow it, and if I will be willing to stay and see it through. The sound of the coffee machine bubbling fills the silence between us. My sister stirs her spoon absent-mindedly, moving the sugar in her cup without actually drinking from it. Her last confession still lingers in the air, as if she's waiting for me to have an immediate answer, a definitive solution that can fix everything. But the truth is, I don't. "There's something else," she finally murmurs, staring at the table. "I didn't tell you everything last time." My chest tightens. What else could there be? I cross my arms and wait. I'm not going to push her. If she's truly ready to talk, she will. I've tried, asking for help before. Her voice is barely a whisper, but every time I do, he finds out. I don't know how. I don't know if he's watching me, if someone tells him. But every time I try to do something, he stops me. My stomach sinks. Now everything makes sense. Her evasive attitude, her hidden desperation behind a facade of strength. It's not just that she's trapped in a complicated financial situation as something darker is at play. I start to say, but she shakes her head. "I don't want to talk about that," she interrupts quickly. "Not now. I just need to know if there's a way out of this without him knowing what I'm planning." The desperation in her eyes shakes me. She is not the kind of person who admits fear, much less the kind who shows it so openly. But here she is, sitting in front of me, asking for a way out she doesn't even believe in. I take a slow breath. I know that any advice I give her now could be the difference between a safe path and one that pushes her further into the abyss. I can't afford to fail. "There are ways," I finally say, "but you need to do this carefully. No traces. No raising suspicions." She nods slowly. For the first time in a long time, she seems willing to listen. The next few days turn into a series of furtive conversations, meticulous plans, and a constant fear of being discovered. I teach her how to hide information, how to communicate securely, how to make decisions without them seeming like decisions. But every step we take feels riddled with risks. Then something happens that changes everything. One night, I receive a call from an unknown number. When I answer, there's a prolonged silence before I hear a shaky breath on the other end of the line. "They found me," my sister whispers in a strangled tone. I think he knows what I'm doing. My heart races. There's no time for questions, no space for doubts. "Where are you?" I ask urgently. A dull noise in the background puts me on high alert. Her breathing becomes faster, more erratic. Then the line goes dead. I freeze for an instant before reality crashes down on me. My sister is in danger. And for the first time in my life, I know I can't let her face this alone. My hands tremble as I stare at the phone screen. My sister's tone, the labored breathing, the abrupt disconnection, it has left me frozen. I try calling her back, but it goes straight to voicemail. I feel the urgency to do something, to move, to act, but I don't know where to start. The possibilities are endless, and all of them dangerous. I take a deep breath and try to think logically. I can't just rush to her house without a plan. I need help. I call my mother, but the line is busy. I try my father, but he doesn't answer. Every passing second eats away at me. Finally, I grab my car keys and leave. The city remains oblivious to my desperation. The cars move at their usual pace. People walk calmly. But for me, everything has changed in an instant. When I arrive at my sister's house, the door is locked. I knock hard, calling her name, but there's no response. I try to remember if she ever gave me a spare key, but I know she never did. Her husband's paranoia would never have allowed it. I think about calling the police, but I have no proof that something serious has happened. I have no right to break in, but the anxiety is consuming me. I walk around the house and reach the kitchen window. It's slightly open. With a shaky sigh, I push it up and manage to slip inside. The house is dimly lit. The living room looks untouched, but there's something in the air that makes my skin crawl. I move cautiously, my footsteps barely a whisper against the wooden floor. I climb the stairs and stop in front of my sister's room. The door is ajar, and as I push it open a little more, I see the room in absolute chaos. Drawers pulled out, clothes scattered, clear signs of a struggle. My breathing quickens. Something happened here. I move toward the nightstand and see her phone shattered on the floor. A chill runs down my spine. If her phone is here, how did she call me? My mind races. Maybe she managed to use another phone, a borrowed one. But if they found her before she could escape, where is she now? A noise downstairs makes me freeze. Footsteps, the creak of the wooden floor. I am not alone. I feel my pulse hammering in my ears as I slowly step back. I have nowhere to hide, no way to defend myself. I glance around and see a table lamp. I grip it with both hands and prepare for the worst. The footsteps grow closer. A shadow appears in the doorway. And then a familiar voice whispers my name. What are you doing here? It's my mother. Her face is pale, her eyes filled with the same worry as mine. She places a hand on her chest and takes a deep breath. I got a message from your sister, she says in a low voice. One I don't fully understand. It said that if anything happened to her, I should find you. Do you know what that means? I swallow hard. My sister knew something like this could happen, and she left us a signal, a warning. But we got here too late. My mother and I look at each other in silence. We both know this isn't just a relationship problem, not a simple domestic dispute. My sister is in real danger, and now it's up to us to find her before it's too late. The weight of silence between my mother and me feels crushing. My sister has disappeared, and the clues she left behind confirm our worst fear. She didn't leave by choice. My mother clutches her phone with trembling hands, rereading the message over and over again. I, on the other hand, focus on the mess in the room, searching for any indication of where she might be. Amid the scattered clothes and papers, I find a notebook. I recognize it immediately. My sister used to carry it everywhere. I flip through the pages frantically until something stands out. And there it is, an address scrawled in rushed handwriting. We have to go, I say with determination. My mother nods without hesitation. We get into the car, and without wasting another second, we head to the address written down. The drive is tense, thick with fear and uncertainty. My grip tightens on the steering wheel, adrenaline coursing through me. When we arrive, the sight leaves us frozen. It's an old roadside motel, the kind that looks straight out of a horror movie. The lights flicker dimly, and the silence is unsettling. We step out of the car and move cautiously. We approach the front desk, but it's empty. A television hums in the background, playing the news on mute. Behind the counter, there's a board with keys and names. I search for my sister's name, but it's not there. However, one key hangs with a torn tag, only half of the number visible, 12. We head toward the rooms, and when we find number 12, my heart pounds wildly. The door is slightly open. With a lump in my throat, I gently push it. And there she is. My sister is sitting on the edge of the bed, her gaze distant. Her face reflects exhaustion, but when she sees us, a spark of life returns to her eyes. She stands up abruptly and embraces us with desperate force. "I knew you would come," she whispers. My mother silently weeps as I hold my sister tightly. I don't want to let go. I don't want her to disappear again. "We have to go," I say, glancing around. "Now." My sister nods, and without needing further explanation, we rush out of the room. Just as we step into the parking lot, we hear a car speeding toward us. It's him. Her husband gets out of the car, fury in his eyes. His jaw is clenched, his fists tight. He sees us and stops for a second, as if calculating his next move, but we don't give him the chance. My mother is already in the car with the engine running. I grab my sister's hand and we run. He starts shouting, but we don't stop. We jump into the car, and my mother accelerates without hesitation. The drive back is a whirlwind of emotions. My sister doesn't say much, but her hand grips mine as if afraid I might let go. When we finally arrive at my mother's house, we lock the door. We are safe. In the days that follow, we help my sister take the necessary steps to ensure her safety. She meets with lawyers, files reports, and with our support, begins again. It won't be an easy road, but for the first time in years, she seems free. One afternoon, as we sip tea in the kitchen, my sister looks at me with a tired smile. "Thank you," she says softly. I simply squeeze her hand. No words are needed. We are together, and that's all that matters. Finally, it's over.